four specializations: branding and communication, social media and content marketing, marketing analytics, and marketing communication with a focus on public relations. Okay. And it's all about skill building in these four different areas. So you could be a digital marketer with a very thorough understanding of, let's say, social media and content marketing, or vice versa. Maybe you want to join a brand and you're skilled in branding and communication, but you also have a very good understanding of just general digital marketing, which is essentially your base program, right? So in this specialization phase now, you're going to get a very good hold of the skills that each of these specializations has to offer. So that's really what this is all about. You can take a minimum of obviously minimum of one specialization. You can take all four if you want to as well. That's absolutely possible, because each specialization does not run, there's no overlap. They do not run simultaneously. For your batch, one of them will start, then the next one, then the next one, and so forth. Okay. And you will receive a calendar with the exact sequence and the schedule for these specializations. But what you should know is each one of them is 6 weeks long. Okay. And yeah, I mentioned it's all about skill building in each of these specializations. Okay, so just in specialized areas of marketing. So let's start off with the first specialization, which is branding and communication. Okay. Now, branding and communication is really a stepping stone into all the other specializations. Okay. It's where you get a very solid understanding of how communication or a brand is built. Okay. And then within branding and communication, you get social media and content. And so everything else is actually, it's a subset of branding and communication. Okay. So this is the structure of this particular specialization. So you can see these are the modules, these are the case studies. We have so Digitag's case study. It's based on a real brand. It's a fictitious name because we were not allowed to use that brand's name. But don't get disheartened at all. It's a very real case study. It is based on you'll get as much value from it had we used the actual brand name. And we also have a Swiggy assignment, which it's the I believe this is the only group assignment that you have in your entire program. So this was created specifically towards the end of last year, in the last year. And so it's a relatively new case study. And so I'm sure all those creative minds out there will have a lot of fun working on this particular group study. Just one thing to keep in mind: if you're taking the specialization, it's a group assignment. So do make sure that you're committed towards your group. Be a part of it, be active in it, make sure that you're participating and you're contributing towards the final outcome, because it becomes very problematic for the rest of your group. And I've seen this happen before, which is why I'm specifically, making a note of it right now. So do ensure you're participating and being a responsible group member. Okay. Now, these are the live sessions that you're going to have. So one will be taken by a MICA faculty member, and the rest are all by very skilled industry experts. Okay. And of course, these are the modules: fundamentals of branding, brand engagement strategy, branding for international markets, and marketing communication. So this is a quick summary of what you're going to be learning in this particular specialization. So all the elements of brand identity, image, and positioning, how to build a brand design and architecture, then how to build and then measure brand positioning using things like perceptual maps, and also just measuring your customer satisfaction. That's how you kind of measure the positioning. And in the second module, that's where you're going to learn how to build a brand engagement strategy and also conduct a brand audit. Then in branding in international markets, in that particular module, that's where you're going to learn how do you brand for both developed and developing markets. That's a very important thing to bear in mind when you're going about branding. And in the last module is on integrated marketing communication strategy. And do note that this is one topic which is covered both in branding and communication as well as marketing communication, with a focus on PR. So I mentioned the other specialization, right? But keep in mind that they're covered from very different point of views in both the specialization. So don't think it's an overlap, it's the same content. It's actually quite the opposite. They're both very, very different. Okay, so just do bear that in mind. One is purely from the perspective of branding, and then the other is from PR. Okay, so in this particular module over here, this is where you learn how do you create an integrated marketing communications plan, how do you set objectives, how do you find the right target group, what are the channels that you should be selecting for your plan, that you should take up, and where you should kind of do your marketing. So all of that will be covered, okay, in detail. And the channels are also discussed in detail over here. Okay, so yeah, that is your branding and communications specialization. Let's move on to the next specialization, social media and content marketing. Okay, so this is what the structure of the specialization looks like. There are 3 modules. Okay, there is deep dive into content marketing. The second module is actually broken down into 2 parts: paid advertising on social media platforms, part 1 and part 2, and then we have community management. Okay, now so now content marketing, deep dive into content marketing. This is where content marketing is covered far more in depth than what you saw in the base program. So there's a deep dive into the applications of content marketing across the consumer funnel. Okay, so you're going to learn how do you use content marketing, for example, to increase brand awareness, or let's say to generate leads, or maybe to increase brand engagement, to establish brand advocacy. So in each of these different areas, how can you use content marketing to your advantage? And all of these are different objectives across the funnel. Okay, so that is going to be your first module. You can see that there are two case studies, Savior and Kid Medics. Once again, fictitious names, but completely, absolutely real case studies, and which you will enjoy a lot. I believe one of them is on community management, and another one is related to content marketing, but they're very interesting case studies. So you do have a lot to look forward to. Okay, then these are all of the live sessions, deep dive into content marketing, Twitter and LinkedIn bootcamp. Okay, and the last module is community management. Okay, so if you're active today on a lot of job search platforms, you will realize that there are a lot of positions like community manager, community engagement manager. All these positions have come up, and it's not new, it's been there for a while now. Okay, so that's what this entire module is really focused on. Okay, as more and more brands want, as they kind of build themselves, they also want to build a very close-knit community of their followers, right? And they're looking for people who can exclusively manage these communities. Okay, so your community manager. For example, the OnePlus community is very famous, but there are a lot of other brands as well which are coming up with their own communities. And these brands may not be as well known as the OnePlus community, but they're definitely very well recognized among their specific target audience. Okay, so this is actually a very important area of social media and content marketing. And your online reputation management, all of that is kind of done within community management. Okay, so let's quickly look at the summary of this particular specialization. So you'll understand, as I mentioned, different applications of content marketing across the funnel. You're going to, in the second and third module, you learn about the fundamentals of paid marketing on social media. So literally how to run a campaign on different channels end to end. And you'll go through the objectives, the targeting, formats, budgets. So you've probably seen, you've run a Facebook campaign already, right? All of you. So you've seen all the different steps of the campaign. So this would be similar, how you do it on different social media channels. You'll learn how to run a paid advertising campaign on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then you'll also learn about what is it specifically that advertisers and brands can do on a couple of other relatively new age platforms. So your short video platforms, ShareChat, Snapchat, Quora, Reddit. So these are also very upcoming platforms, and you'll learn a bit about that as well. Then in the last module on community management, that's where you're going to learn how do you build, manage and sustain a social media community right from ground up, okay, right from the start. So you learn that, and you'll also learn about this specific model called the space model. And it basically talks about how do you leverage different community spaces in your strategy. So everything is ultimately linked to a strategy. So that's a very relevant and useful model to learn about. And finally, how do you build, execute, automate, and track a community management plan? Okay, so that is what is going to be covered in the last module on community management. Okay, let's move on to the next specialization now, which is marketing analytics. Okay, now one thing I'll say before we start this specialization is that this particular specialization, this particular skill is a very valuable tool, skill to have. And I think, as Deepak also mentioned, there are very few people who have this skill. But that's primarily because you have to put in a lot of effort when it comes to doing this particular special. It's slightly more difficult than the others. You need to be very open-minded towards data, towards numbers, okay? And just generally comfortable with numbers, okay? Because there are a lot of technical and data-oriented things that are going to be taught in this specialization. So usually, we tend to get a lot of requests for extra doubt resolving sessions, or, live sessions for this specialization, because sometimes it tends to get difficult for some people. But honestly, don't panic if you take this, and if you're going through this. This is really a valuable skill that will come very handy for you. If you master this, if you're if you really go that extra mile and decide that, no, I want to do this, I will put in my best to understand this and get through this, then you'll actually end up getting a job in analytics. That's if you want to get a job in analytics. And definitely in that particular field, you're paid much higher than as compared to all the other specializations. Okay, so just understand that you need to be in the right frame of mind. This might be a bit tough, but nevertheless, you're gonna conquer it. Okay, so you'll have all the support from us in terms of TA sessions, doubt resolution sessions, whatever it is, and we usually do provide extra support for this specialization. So no need to worry in that respect. But yeah, do understand you need to be mentally prepared that you have to deal with a lot of numbers, but the final outcome from this is going to be amazing. So just do remember that, okay? Let's move on to the structure of the specialization. So there are 3 modules and 1 case study, and there's also 1 live project, okay? So you can see all the module names over here, and there'll also be several attribution, story visualization, and app analytics tools that will be taught to you in this particular specialization. One more thing, in the live project, you're not going to be working on any one specific tool. You'll be given data and you'll be working with that data, but there is no specific tool here. And of course, there are live sessions, there are boot camps, which will help you throughout this particular specialization. Let's just move to the summary quickly. Just a second. Okay. So, basically, you're going to learn how to run, how you learn how you can execute end-to-end campaigns by kind of bringing together all the promotional data that comes under the umbrella of Google Analytics. So that's your main hub for data, as you've probably understood by now. But yeah, you will really just learn how to make use of that data, how to read that data, and far more advanced than you would have in the base program, if at all. Then next, you're going to work on different types of app analytics tools that are available. And how do you go about making the right selection when it comes to identifying, like, how do you pick the right tools to help you identify where your users are coming from? What are the user acquisition channels, so to speak? So that's what you learn there. Then you learn about attribution and how to work on attribution tools. I mentioned that already. Next, you will learn about data visualization. This is a very useful and relevant skill to have when you're working in the analytics field and you want to be able to present a complex data to people who don't understand it at all. That's where data visualization essentially is going to help you. How do you use storytelling to illustrate your complex data to someone who has no idea about it at all, to important stakeholders in your company? So it's a very important skill to have if you're someone who works on a lot of data. Okay. Next, you learn about hypothesis testing and A/B testing. So this is going to help you analyze your data in a much more intense way. Okay. Then predictive analytical techniques such as marketing mix modeling, using regression analysis. Okay, don't get overwhelmed by all these terms. They may not make much sense to you right now, but once you get into the specialization, you will understand all of them perfectly well. Okay. Next, you learn about database segmentation techniques. So this will include RFM analysis and clustering. Okay. And lastly, you learn about propensity models and how do you use them to predict consumer behavior, which ultimately it's all about consumer behavior, right? That's what we're trying to kind of get to the heart of through all of these analytics. So yeah. So all of this is really just going to help you make sense of the data that you're getting from different marketing channels. So analyzing channel performance, attribution, and also just looking at it from, this will also kind of look at the consumer side. How do you analyze their behavior from a data standpoint, as I just mentioned? So yeah, just be ready to deal with a lot of data, but remember, it's very valuable, and it will reap a lot of benefits going ahead. And the last specialization is marketing communications with a focus on public relations. Now, this is, and it says PR in brackets, but it's not just PR, it's also just about communications in general. Okay. And I would say, if you're someone who has a creative mindset, you're really good with general just creativity, this is a good specialization for you. Okay, I mentioned this specialization also has integrated marketing communication. So here again, you'll understand different kinds of channels and how do you make a IMC plan within the purview of public relations, and that you'll understand how that differs from a generic IMC plan once you kind of do the specialization. So that's the first module. Then we get into creative communication. Now, this is where you understand how do you come up with ideas. Okay, so someone, let's say, who's into copywriting or the creative aspect of things, they would definitely find the specialization very, very attractive. Okay, now we have a workshop here as well as part of the second module. It's called Crafting Creative Communication. And this is where you learn how do you come up with creative campaigns. And it's actually taken up by a very interesting industry expert. So there's a lot to look forward to here. So literally, once you have the brand brief, how do people think about how do they think about it from a creative perspective? How do they come up with ideas that work, that fulfill the requirements of that brand brief, right? So in the second module, you literally learn how to build a good creative brand brief. And this skill, of course, is extremely handy for an ad agency and anyone who intends to work there. So do keep that in mind. And the last module is public relations. And this is totally focused on, building media relations, developing influencer and analyst relationships. And this is also where you're primarily going to learn about crisis management, online reputation management across different social media channels. So there'll be a big focus on that over here, as opposed to in community management, which I mentioned earlier, although it will be touched upon there. But this is where literally, this is what public relations is all about. Okay, so let's quickly look at the summary of the learning. So different elements of an integrated marketing communication strategy, creative aspects of communication, ideation, copywriting, visualization, as I mentioned, how to write a creative brand brief, like a really strong one. That's what's going to primarily be covered in the second module. So different frameworks that you can use, the Scamper framework, for example. Then how do you develop media influence and analyst relationships, online reputation management across the whole gamut of social media. And lastly, crisis management, which of course is really crucial. So so those were your 4 specializations. Just some last additional points I wanted to make it very clear. I said this right at the start, that your batch is not being divided into tracks, but you will be divided into smaller groups obviously based on which specialization you select. And even though we will have live sessions, boot camps, workshops, there won't be any personalized industry sessions. Okay. So you saw all the live sessions, all the boot camps in the structure for each of the specializations. So do keep that in mind. Specializations are not track specific, and everyone who is in a particular specialization will learn the same content, and you will have access to the same live sessions, the same boot camp. So do keep that in mind. One more thing, I do know that in the base program, after each course, you got access to another track's content, but that's not going to happen over here. You only have access to your own the specializations that you selected, but you will not be getting access to other specializations. Okay. Lastly, the name of the specialization will be on the final program certificate. So, for example, the way it would appear is, let's say Ramla has completed, XYZ program with specialization in XYZ. Kindly do not raise your hand at this point. We will get to you after this. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, Ramla has completed XYZ program with specialization in XYZ, and then the name of your specializations will be mentioned. Whether you've taken all 4 specializations or one, everything will be mentioned on the certificate. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And but do note that you will have a different grade sheet for each specialization. So it won't be included in your base program grade sheet, but you will have, but the certificate will be the same.